and even Zoom multi effects.
Yeah, sure.
And those devices, they actually made space on the recording that plugins are not making. I have a PCM 91 somewhere around because I got it back from repair and I haven't opened it yet. And that thing, when you dial the reverb correctly, it gives you an amount of space that no plugin gives you. Why? It's also digital. And it's older.
So what is it?
I have no idea what it is. I want to know.
It's magic.
I just want to know why people cannot make the plugins have that same amount of space. So for me to get that same amount of space, I have to combine a whole bunch of reverbs.
So you send it to multiple reverbs.
Yes.
Yeah. I do that too, by the way. I send to like 3 or 4 reverbs typically. You know?
Because then you
like a big
because you need it to be denser and
right.
and more open and have more space and whatever, because you cannot achieve it with one.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Right. I need a little. I kind of will blend like halls and plates and like, you know, just room reverbs and just get like a full picture that feels right.
Yeah,
for, like,
but
let's say the vocal. Or whatever.
I'll do that, and then I'll choose whatever reverbs are actually feel good with the song, which could be 2 or could be 3 or 4, and then I just use different blends for different sources.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
And also delays that go to reverbs also, which is nothing new. I'm not, I didn't make this up or discover this. I mean, like all of the, big mixers are blending effects all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just feel that when inside the computer, you need to do this even more, because there's like plug-in reverbs do not make that same amount of space that the other digital reverbs used to. I remember the first time I used a 480, which was in Argentina. I turned the send knob on the SSL, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like a whole huge thing opened up in front of me, and I was like, "Why? Like, this is old. Like, this is so old, and this has the ability of making this feel like this, and we have such powerful computers and everything, and even though a whole bunch of companies have tried to do the impulse responses from the Bricastis and from everybody and whatever.
Sure.
You still hook up a Bricasti and it kicks the plugins behind. Why? If they're both digital,
I guess, yeah.
There's.
Maybe it's more additive. Maybe I don't know.
There has to be something that I don't know what it is, and I wish
All right, if listeners have any idea, reason why, then reach out.
I knew.
I guess it's one of the mysteries of the universe.
Yeah. But that's what I like. That's what I deal with when it comes to reverbs. And then when I was telling you about the vocal with okay, I'll use the deverb in the whole setting and push it in, right? Until I feel it's making space for the vocal. But I cannot listen to the reverb tail. It's just there making space, right? So when you're listening to the whole thing, you to the whole song together, you feel that the vocal has more space, but you don't feel that it's wet. So you will need,
because it's like a short tail.
No, it's actually long. It's just the default as it opens. The 4.5 second long thing.
Oh shit.
That one.
That's long.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's very low in volume. And of course, if the song stops, you gotta automate it off, you're not gonna leave the tail just running. Of course, if it's too long for the song, then you just, make it shorter, right? But I just try it as it opens, because I felt like that's the one that works. So I was saying, you feel that vocal has more space, but it's not wet. So you need something to make it wet so that it's like it has like it so that it feels like it has something. So then you'll open another reverb that doesn't make as much space as this one and throw it on and make the noticeable reverb that one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was. And then since you have this very noticeable reverb on the vocal, you cannot hear the one in the back because that one is masking the other one, but the other one is the one making the space. You know what I mean?
Got it. Okay, so you have the space maker, and then you have the pretty reverb, I guess, so to speak. That is just way louder, so that you don't hear the space reverb. Yeah, it just kind of gets mushed in, but it gives the whole track that kind of glue or gel or whatever.
And that's usually how I can get my vocals very like a lot of intelligibility, because then like they're very separated from the music in space, but I mean, since everything is getting processed through that whatever chain I have in the master, depending on the song, everything is getting glued back together.
So interesting. All right, I have to play with this. This is a super unique perspective. So thank you for sharing that with me.
No problem, man.
Yeah, dude. Wow. I'd love to ask you a little bit about low end, because like I love the low end in your mixes, and like I love like that like Latin pop kind of massive low end thing. Tell me a bit about your approach to getting really heavy low end that translates and also kind of gets loud. Like what's going on?
What
over
is
there?
It? Low cuts.
Low cuts.
Not that much low end as you would think.
Really?
Yeah. Well, it's not that I'm low cutting at 80 or anything, but I'm doing cuts down there. I'm just trying to leave something, take the lower part, and like for example the kick or the bass, depending on the song, like, which is a regular thing that you do in mixing, but I just do it with low cuts.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just figure out like, okay, if the kick is huge, then I'll let the kick take all the lower bottom part, right? And then I'll probably cut
25.
Then I'll cut it up to 30 or 40, depending on the pitch or length or whatever fundamental it has. And then I'll cut the bass higher. And then I'll try to cut it so when they hit together, they feel like they're gluing. If there's something production-wise where I feel like the sound of the bass and the sample of the kick are not working together, then I'll resort to side chaining. But I usually don't side chain, which is something that like most people in these genres do.
Yeah.
And I understand why. But the thing with side chaining is that you're ducking something while the other one's punching, so you're actually losing some punch.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so
you beat me to the punch there.
Yeah, so like if the production is well, if the producer did his job well done, the kick and the bass will work. You just have to find the right spot and where to cut the two to make them work together and make them work with the song so that they're not too thin or too fat.
Yeah. I think it's because I know you're like, you're into rock and roll also, but like, there's something about like that rock and roll kick and bass that because they're both hitting at the same time, they just give this like cumulative thing that just like really rocks you.
Yeah.
And like, and when you have like a side chain on the bass, I mean, I'm a bass player. I want the bass to hit with the kick. I know what that feels like. You know what I mean? Like that's what you want. And so the side chaining is, I think it's very genre dependent. And so for me, like, if I'm doing like something that needs side chaining, that's when I'll do it. Like but only because of like the genre, not usually because of a sonic thing, like you're saying.
Also something with the side chaining that I've noticed, that when you send stuff to mastering, whatever is compressed feels more compressed, and whatever is being side chained feels more side chained.
Right.
Because then when the kick hits, it's going to hit the limiter. The limiter is going to duck that kick for that amount of milliseconds.
Milliseconds.
And
Yeah.
it's ducking the bass even more too.
Right.
So like you got like if you're side chaining, you got to be really careful because then in the end you're ducking the already ducked bass when
Right.
you're if
We want transients. We just can't have too many transients at the same time.
yeah.
Or like we can't overload it.
Yeah, I mean
And so you got to find.
and sometimes producers will actually put a bass that has transients and the kick. And then I'll just put an L1 to the bass. I don't care. Like the L1 will just get rid of the transient, the initial transient of the bass, and it's gone, and just leave it to the kick, right?
Right.
And that's how I've done it, you know.
Right. Or you could use like a clipper also to kind of do that.
Yeah, the thing with the clipper and low frequencies is that it tends to fart.
So got to be careful.
Yeah. So
We don't want farting on the air.
So yeah, I for those purposes I tend to use either L1 or L2 depending on how clean it needs to be. Meaning L2 is cleaner than L1.
Right. L1 has a sound.
Yeah. And it's very nice.
Yeah.
So depending on you know if it depending on whatever, I'll use either of those. But clippers I'll use for snares, for example, like things that are more in the mid range or some
Mid range.
Because if you clip things that are too low, it'll be noticeable very quickly, like very very quick.
Yeah.
Especially like if you're doing reggaeton and then you're like the kicks. I'll probably, like, if they have too much transient, then I'll use a transient designer and just nudge the attack knob a little bit to the left, but not like noticeably to the left, just a little bit so that I can round it off. So instead of saturating the kick, I'm just achieving the same thing, but being cleaner.
Yeah. Have you ever tried side shading, like just like a little narrow frequency band? Like sometimes I'll
on the bass, like from the kick to the bass.
Yeah, like sometimes like Fernando Ladero, I don't know if you know him, was telling me about this on the air about how he'll just like kind of like narrow in where the kick is hitting sometimes on an electric bass. And just if it's like 60 hertz or something, and just kind of do like a little with the Pro Q3, like a dynamic band that kind
I haven't done. I have done the Pro multiband, the Pro MB, and having the lower band side chained to the kick. But I haven't done a notch filter side chained to the kick. I have to try that out.
Got it. It's cool. It's surprisingly effective. From my experience, it's cool. Fernando turned me on to it, so shout out to Fernando.
It sounds like it could work. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but yeah, sometimes you do get rid of some of that punch, But it's similar, I guess, to what you're doing, anyways, with like the high passing.
Another thing that I think some people don't understand is how filters work, what they do to the sound. If you low cut something, yes, it'll make it thinner because you're taking lows off. But your brain, okay, the sound has a height, right? Depending on its frequency content, where your brain locates cymbals up and it locates bass guitar down, right? So you can exaggerate this with the filters. So if a bass is too deep for a song, if you start high passing or low cutting, the bass will start rising in height on the stereo image. If you high cut it, if you high cut something, that element will go down in height. Okay?
Got it.
So that's
Yeah.
another way of